Hi, this is an overview of the GAiA web portal, and we'll concentrate on the network management settings within the GAiA web interface. So we'll log in from here and get started. So this is the overview page of the GAiA web interface. We can see its widgets. So the first widget is the system overview widget, which gives you information such as the version, which is R76, which is the latest version, the kernel version, the edition, build number, how long the system has been up for, and the platform this Check Point GAiA is deployed upon, so which is VMware. On the right hand side we've got our blades, so which blades are enabled on this Check Point firewall, which is literally all of them. On the left here we've got our network configuration, so you can see the interfaces, the IP addresses, and the link status, whether they're up or down. If you scroll further down we can see memory monitor, throughput, CPU monitor, packet rate. So some further widgets, and I'd probably think Check Point would keep developing this into lots more widgets to come. So right at the bottom we can see the add widget button. If we click on this we can see our widgets here, and I've got all of them enabled. So if we scroll back up, and at the top we can see where it says manage software blades using Smart Console. So Smart Console is used to enforce security policies such as firewall rules, application URL filtering, IPS, QoS, and etc. So you can download that from here. And also you could open up terminal session from here as well. So if we click on here, we'll cover this in another video, but I'll just give you a quick overview just to get so you get a feel of how the command line is on the Check Point firewall. So we've logged in. If we click on question mark, we can see some further commands. So show interface, set interface, add user, save config, etc. So if we type set and hit tab, you can see further commands. Yeah. So also, if we log in via the expert command and specify the password, we get our Linux and Unix style commands. If I go to a particular directory, fwdir, bin directory, you can see some of the checkpoint features or utilities that are stored within this directory. But we'll save this for another video. And here you can see that the configuration is locked. That's because we were logged in to the terminal session. So we can click on this to unlock it, and when unlocking it we get full access to all these settings here, otherwise we can't configure them. So click on yes, and now we've got full functionality again to the GAiA web portal. So the section I'd like to concentrate on for this video is the network management section here. And the first one is network interfaces. So here we can configure the network interfaces themselves. So these are the physical interfaces. So if we click on interface here, let's click on Ethernet 1 physical interface, and we can configure this physical interface from here. So we can give it an IP address. So let's give it an IP address of 10.20.30.8 and give it a subnet mask. And we can also optionally obtain the IPv4 address automatically. So if you're using an ISP who assigns dhcp addresses via dhcp, you could specify the checkbox here. We can also specify an IPv6 address if you're using IPv6 addresses, and this section is grayed out at the moment, and this is because down this menu section, actually it's this system configuration area here, you have to enable the use of IP version 6 from here and reboot the gateway. Once that's done, then you're able to configure this section here. Finally, the Ethernet tab, so you can see the hardware address here, and also the maximum transmission unit, so you can adjust that as required if required. The auto negotiation is enabled here, so it will auto negotiate the link speed, etc. from here. Finally, you've got to enable it for it to come up, so it's down at the moment, the link status. So if we click OK here, that should come up. So it's come up here, and it's got the IP address and subnet mask specified here. So what we'll do is we'll look at the types of interfaces we can configure on the GAiA portal, from the GAiA portal, and there's quite a few interfaces here. So the first one we'll look at is the alias interface, and the alias interface lets you assign more than one IP address to a physical interface. So this is also known as secondary IP addresses, and you can specify the member of here. So what is the physical interface this alias interface is a member of? So let's just go for Ethernet 1 for example, and specify the IP address, and I'm just going to put any IP address in here. Oops. Specify the subnet mask. Let's look at the settings. So it's part of Ethernet 1. Let's click OK, and it will create that here. So it's give it an Ethernet 1:1 here. So the name of the alias interface, and you can see the IP address subnet mask here. The next one is VLAN interface. So you can configure VLAN interfaces from here. Almost definitely you'd be configuring a number of these interfaces and configuring the other side as well. So in a Cisco world, it's known as trunking. So you'd need to configure a trunk port or tagging for everyone else. And you'd configure the VLAN ID from here. So for example, you may have 3 VLANs, so 3, 4 and 5 for example. And you'd specify the member of physical interface. So let's say for example Ethernet 0 was our interface connected to the internal side of the network. You'd configure that here, and you'd configure the VLAN 3 here, you'd hit OK, you'd configure another one of these with VLAN 4 and another one with VLAN 5, and you'd give all of them their own individual subnet addresses. The other side, for example, if it's a Cisco switch, you'd configure that as a trunk port, so going into the console on that and specifying the interface command, interface FA01 for example. If it's FA01 you'd want to configure as a trunk port, and you'd specify the command switch port mode trunk to put the Cisco switch interface FA01 into trunk mode. And once these 3 VLANs are configured on this side, and they're both connected via an Ethernet cable, they can carry all the VLANs across. Okay, so let's just give it an IP address. Again, I'm just specifying any IP address here, giving it the subnet mask, and just having a look at the VLAN. So it's VLAN 3 on Ethernet 0. If we click on OK on that, and it's created that here. So you can see the name is Ethernet 0, so it's part of Ethernet 0, but it's the VLAN of VLAN ID 3. You can see the IP address and the subnet mask here. So let's look at our next one, which is the bond interface. So you can use multiple interfaces for link aggregation that joins multiple physical interfaces into one virtual bond interface. So we can see the 2 interfaces here. We can move them across, for example. Now these 2 interfaces will act as one bonded interface, and then we can specify the algorithm or the operation mode to send packets across them. So the most common one is round robin, so we'd send a packet sequentially. So a packet would go to one interface and then the other interface, and it'll just keep going round in circles like that. But there's also more advanced operation mode, so you can use any of these three as well. You'd give it a bond group, you'd give it an IP address, so the IP address will be for the virtual bond interface, and once you specify the virtual IP address, you could route packets to that virtual IP address. So the physical IP addresses the physical interfaces don't have IP addresses, it's just the one bond IP address you'd specify here, and that will represent all the physical interfaces. So the next section also is the advanced section. Here you can specify the maximum transmission unit, also the monitoring intervals to monitor the interfaces. Okay, so we're not going to apply that, we're just going to cancel it. And the next one is the bridge interface. So bridge interfaces implement native layer 2 bridging, and configuring an interface as a bridge lets you deploy the appliance in an existing topology without changing the existing IP addresses. So if you wanted to put the Check Point gateway in between your main firewall or main router and your local area network, and you didn't want to change the IP addresses, the subnet, etc., you can do that using a bridge interface. So you give it a management IP address, which can be still in the same subnet as your local area network, and then you can use the Check Point gateway for certain use cases. For example, you may use it for as a DLP gateway, so it's looking for outbound data leakage, or you may use it for web filtering or application filtering, so it's filtering for malicious packets, or users going out to the internet on specific certain websites, etc. So you can use the UTM functionality of the gateway, and you do not need to change any of the topology, subnet or IP addresses, etc. for that. Okay, so you'd specify two interfaces that act as a bridge interface. You'd specify the management IP address, give it a bridge group. I've not used this fail open, and you can't click on it, but from what it mentions, fail open, so I think if the gateway dies, the physical interfaces within the hardware will still will bridge together and act as an open connection through the box, even if the box has completely failed and it's got no power. So your users can still get out to the internet. Okay, so let's cancel that. Let's click on the add and look at the next one. So the next one is the loopback interface, and you can use loopback interfaces for testing purposes or as a proxy interface for an unnumbered interface. The area where I've seen loopback interfaces used most commonly is with the dynamic routing protocols. Because loopback interfaces don't fail, physical interfaces can fail, and loopback interfaces are always on and enabled. They're used in use cases where dynamic routing protocols are used. So BGP or OSPF, you see the loopback interface used quite often. So you'd specify the IP address, whether it's IP version 4, IP version 6, specify OK, and that's done for you. The next one is a VPN tunnel. So a VTI interface. So there's two types of VPNs: a policy-based VPN, where you do not need to use the VTI interface, but there's also the route-based VPN, where you do need to use this VPN tunnel interface. So you specify the bits in here, so the VPN tunnel ID, the peer address, the VPN tunnel type, etc. And you have specific scenarios, such as if you're using dynamic routing protocols, or your design requires primary and backup VPNs. Okay, so let's cancel that. Let's move on to the next one, which is 16.4 tunnel. So if you're using IP version 6 and your ISP, for example, is using IP version 4, to route packets across the IP version 4 ISP network, you may need to encapsulate the IP version 6 into an IP version 4 packet, so you can do that from here. Finally, the last one, if you're using DSL line, for example, point-to-point over Ethernet, you can configure that from here and specify all your settings here. Okay, so let's cancel that and move on. So the next area within the network management section is the ARP section. So you can specify static ARP entries. So for services that don't change IP addresses, you can specify the IP addresses and the MAC addresses here. And you've got some further settings, ARP table settings, some proxy ARP settings, so you can configure that from here. Okay, going further down, there's not much here, so let's move on to DHCP server. So you could use the Check Point GAiA as a DHCP server, so it's assigning DHCP addresses to clients. You'd enable it here, you'd add your DHCP server settings from here. So you'd specify your subnet settings here, you'd specify the address pool, the type of pool, whether you're including these addresses or excluding them, the status, whether it's enabled or disabled. Some lease configuration, so you can adjust these as required, and routing and DNS. So you can specify the default gateway for the clients, and also the DNS information for the clients as well. Don't forget to enable it from here. So let's look at the next section, which is host and DNS. So host and DNS, we've got some of this already configured from when we first built the gateway. So you've got your DNS suffix here and your DNS information here. So this DNS information, unlike the previous one, is for the gateway itself. The previous DNS information within the DHCP server area was for the clients, so this is for the gateway itself. And you can specify hosts to IP addresses down here as well for DNS resolution. So let's move on to the next section. So static routes. So you specify any static routes here. You've always got a default route, and then you could specify further ones here. Add your static routes here. Your next hop can be normal, black hole, or reject. Usually it's normal. That's the standard one. So you could add your gateway here by IP address or outgoing interface. And also, if you've got lots of static routes, which usually if you've got too many of them, you'd use dynamic routing protocols, but if you've got quite a few, you could do it using batch mode. So add multiple static routes. And you can add lots of static routes in here, and the type of static route as well. Okay, so the next one is IP version 6 static routes, and it's literally IP version like IP version 4, but it's using IP version 6 addresses. And finally, NetFlow. So if you've got NetFlow, you could using NetFlow, you could specify the collectors here. You can add the collectors, specify the details here, and you can add them from here. So we've covered this section here, network management, this area here. In the next video we'll configure the rest, which is system management. And just to have a look at that IP version 6 configuration, so you configure it from here, you turn it on from here, and it would specify this action will require reboot. Let's turn it off for now, so you do that from here. So we'll configure that, we'll cover all this in the next video, system management, as well as advanced routing, user management, high availability, maintenance and software updates. It's quite a few areas to cover, so we'll cover that in video 2. So the remaining section of the GAiA web portal, you've got a scratch pad here, so you can make notes here. So I've got a note to configure DHCP, for example, or to configure, let's say, proxy. And you can click on OK. Next time you come in here, you know that you've got something to finish off. You can just click that and the notes there. The other nice thing about the GAiA web portal is the search functionality. So if you search for something, let's say high availability or VLARP, just click on it, and then you could it gives you the options here. You can click on one of them and it will take you straight to that section. If we scroll down here, you can see that the VLARP has been highlighted with blue. So click on that. Yeah, so it shows that we're in this section here. And I think that's pretty much it for the web portal, the general web portal settings. This one here, view mode, so you've got the advanced and you've got the basic. To be honest, I've not used the basic. I always stick with the advanced section. I assume the basic will just take away some of these menu options over here. Okay, so that's it from me for this video, and stay tuned for my second video to finish off the GAiA web portal. Thanks for watching.